A cowboy was sold like a prisoner, but the woman who bought him didn't want a servant, she wanted a husband. When Ethan discovers the Apache woman's shocking reason, one choice changes both of their lives forever. Will he leave and claim freedom, or stay and follow his heart? Like, subscribe, and watch till the end. The dusty auction yard in Texas had gone silent when the final captive was brought forward. Unlike the others, the cowboy stood tall despite the ropes around his wrists. Dust clung to his boots, and the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the wooden platforms. Traders and ranch hands whispered among themselves, judging him with quick glances. Some thought he looked too proud. Others assumed trouble followed a man who refused to lower his eyes. No one raised another offer. The auctioneer waited, annoyed by the silence, until movement from the edge of the crowd drew everyone's attention at once. A woman stepped forward, wearing traditional Apache clothing and carrying herself with calm confidence. Her name was Ayanna, known among her people for making decisions few dared question. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she looked directly at the captive, as if measuring something deeper than strength. Ethan met her gaze without fear. After a quiet moment, she placed her offer. Murmurs spread through the crowd. People expected her to buy supplies or horses, not a silent cowboy nobody wanted. The auctioneer accepted quickly, and within moments the captive belonged to her by law. Ethan expected a difficult future. During the ride away from town, he prepared himself for hard labor, anger, or humiliation. Yet Ayanna said almost nothing. When they reached the Apache camp near the Rocky Hills, she surprised him again. She cut the ropes from his wrists and handed him water. Nobody guarded him. Nobody ordered him to work. Several people in the camp watched with curiosity, but no one interfered. Ethan stayed cautious. Freedom felt strange after being treated like property. He wondered whether this unexpected kindness carried a hidden price he had not yet discovered. As evening settled across the desert, a small fire burned between them. The sky turned orange before fading into deep blue. Ayanna sat quietly and finally spoke. Her voice was calm and direct. She told Ethan that he was free and could leave if he truly wished. Then she explained her reason for bringing him there. Her people expected her to marry soon, but she had refused every proposal. She wanted someone who understood hardship instead of comfort. Ethan listened carefully, uncertain whether she was serious or testing him in some unfamiliar way. Ethan looked into the fire before answering. A small smile crossed his face as he shook his head. He told her that being bought could never make someone a husband. Marriage, he said, had to come from choice. Ayanna did not argue. She simply nodded and looked toward the dark mountains in the distance. Then she answered quietly that she understood. Time, not ownership, would decide everything. Her words stayed with him longer than he expected. For the first time since his capture, Ethan felt something unfamiliar return to him. The possibility that his future was still his own. Days passed across the wide land of Texas, and Ethan slowly became part of the rhythm of the Apache camp. Nobody treated him as a captive anymore. Each morning he worked beside others, repairing fences damaged by wind, carrying water from the stream, and helping with daily tasks. At first people watched him carefully, expecting him to leave at any moment. But Ethan stayed respectful and asked for nothing. Ayanna never gave him orders. She only observed from a distance. Her silence wasn't cold. It felt thoughtful. Ethan began to realize she trusted actions more than promises or words. One evening, after a long day beneath the desert sun, Ethan sat near the fire while the camp settled into quiet. Sparks drifted upward into the dark sky. Ayanna sat across from him, sharpening a small knife in silence. Ethan had carried one question for days and finally decided to ask. He looked at her and said, "Why me?" Ayanna stopped and looked toward the mountains, instead of answering immediately. After a moment she said calmly, Everyone else saw a captive. I saw someone who stayed standing even after losing everything. Ethan listened without speaking. Her answer stayed in the air between them. Ethan gave a quiet laugh and leaned back. "And if I leave tomorrow?" he asked. He expected disappointment or resistance. Instead, Ayana simply nodded once. "Then you leave." There was no anger in her voice, and no attempt to persuade him. Ethan stared at her, surprised. For days, he had believed there had to be conditions attached to her kindness, yet she asked for nothing. In that moment, he understood something important. She had never wanted ownership. She wanted someone who chose to stand beside her willingly. That night, Ethan could not sleep. He lay under the open sky, thinking about the road behind him and the road ahead. Freedom had always meant moving forward without looking back, yet now he questioned whether freedom also meant choosing where to belong. Nobody in the camp expected him to stay. Nobody tried to keep him. Before sunrise, he prepared his horse quietly and packed what little he had. As he rode toward the edge of camp, the morning air felt colder than usual. He reached the ridge and looked back one last time. From the distance, he saw Ayana beginning her morning work, as if nothing had changed. She didn't run after him or call his name. Ethan sat silently for a moment, then turned his horse around. He rode back into camp and stepped down. Ayana looked at him, but said nothing. Ethan walked closer and smiled slightly. "If I stay," he said softly, "it won't be because I was bought." Ayana's expression softened for the first time. She nodded and answered quietly, "It never had to be." And for the first time, Ethan chose to stay completely on his own.